Resuming debate, reprise de débat, the honourable member for Saskatoon-Grasswood.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and it gives me great pleasure here this afternoon in the House to speak on the private member bill C-308. As an almost 40-year veteran of CTV, it may seem a little peculiar, I'm sure, that I would rise today and plead the merits of keeping the CBC as a Crown corporation, but I'm here to do it. The Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, as we know, has functioned as Canada's public broadcaster for over 8 decades. Private broadcasters, and I have worked for them all my broadcasting career, need competition. CBC gives a different perspective and certainly gives private broadcasters that much-needed competition. When you have competition, I believe you have innovation. I believe you have diversity. And that has elevated, I feel, the quality of journalism in this country and adds to our freedom of speech. As we have heard this week in the Heritage Committee from the Competition Bureau, there are concerns about not enough competition in this industry. The big private telcos have dominated the private radio and television sector. Now, being a traditionalist, I respect the fact that the CBC is the oldest existing broadcasting network in this country, with certainly a unique mandate. The mission statement of the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, as set out in their annual report from the year of 2007, is to present programs designed to inform, enlighten, and entertain, and that reflect Canadians and Canada's regions in both official languages. Now, independent polls conducted by Forum Research back in 2011 and again in 2013 revealed that really the majority of Canadians, 53% in 2011 and 51% in 2013, support the public funding of CBC. Back then, only 25% believe in the privatization. Now, privatization of the CBC, as we all know, could really save the federal government well over $1 billion, 1.2 and more. But let's ask this question before we talk about the money. Let's ask the question, what would we lose? Well, we would most certainly lose local broadcast news in many remote regions of this country, plus minority language communities. Believe me, the private industry has no appetite, zero, to serve these regions in our country. I know because I've worked for them. The CBC, with their distinct programming, excels at the educational component of helping Canadians learn about this country, showcasing Canadian culture, showcasing our art, our literature, our history, and probably most importantly, our geography. For an example, last summer, let's just take last summer, Madam Speaker, over 11 million people on a Saturday night turned into CBC to watch the concert, The Tragically Hip. They performed with lead singer Gord Downie. Almost 3-hour performance was carried live on CBC TV, CBC Radio, and streamed online on their website. It was an opportunity for many. It was an opportunity to say goodbye, their final farewell to Gord Downie, who had bravely announced earlier in the year that he had terminal brain cancer. No surprise, Gord gave his first interview after the tour to CBC. To me, this was a prime example of Canadian culture at its best. Private broadcasters had absolutely zero interest in producing this distinct Canadian historic moment. May I say this, Madam Speaker, 11 million tuned in. That's nearly a third of the population in this country. So, as technology, consumer preferences, and market condition has changed, the CBC has had to adapt in order to maintain its role as a leading creator and distributor of Canadian content in this country. There is no doubt that in today's ever-evolving news market, Canadians increasingly consuming non-traditional media, utilizing non-traditional news sources and social media sites. The appetite, though, for news and information, believe it or not, in this country has never been higher. Canadians want to consume a variety of sources of information. The CBC has also nurtured significant talent in this country in the journalism and in the entertainment industry. People like Barbara Frum, Lorne Green, John Candy, let's take Don Cherry, Pierre Burton, Tommy Hunter, Wayne and Schuster. I could go on and on and on. And let's not forget the three women that went on to be Canada's Governors General: Jan Sauvé, Adrienne Clarkson, and Michael Jean, all CBC alumni. And of course, Madam Speaker, I would be remiss if I did not pay tribute to the award-winning author, the journalist, the producer, Professor Stuart McLean, who just passed away on Wednesday. Who will ever forget his humorous stories from Vinyl Cafe? It should be also noted that the CBC has been and continues to be a source for Canadian expats, just to keep up to date with news from home. Back in 1978, and I know that seems like a long time ago, but CBC became the first broadcaster in the world to use an orbiting satellite for television service. It linked Canada from east to west, and maybe more importantly, to the north. Let me quote Hubert Lacroix, President CEO of CBC, who the corporate plan summary from 2016-17 to 2020 to 2021 states. The evolution of our regional services also reflects the changing pattern of audience consumption, with mobile and digital services telling stories in new ways and engaging with our audiences. By leveraging web and digital platforms and adjusting the length of our TV supper hour news shows, we were able to find resources to provide audiences with news updates at different times throughout the day. Segments from local morning radio shows that were simultaneously broadcast on TV, and more news coverage from regional sites and even social media. As important as the web and digital platforms have become, TV continues to be the place where the majority of Canadians watch content, especially in the evening. In Strategy 2020, we promised that we would not leave TV and radio behind as we transform ourselves into a modern, more relevant public broadcaster. Lacroix goes on to say they currently have local programming from their 21 television stations, 88 radio stations, 1 digital station, 2 main television networks, 1 in English, 1 in French. There are 5 specialty TV channels and 4 Canada-wide radio networks, 2 in each official language. Advertising. Yes, CBC Radio Canada's second largest source of revenue. In the fiscal year 2015-16, it generated over $250 million, but it was only 16% of total revenue and sources of funds. CBC is witnessing some profound shifts in the advertising market that are negatively affecting the outlook of traditional media companies like CBC Radio Canada. CBC, though, not unlike the private broadcasters, are all experiencing downturn in advertising revenues. This is an industry-wide problem. We have heard that for the last year in our Canadian Heritage Committee. But TV is still the king of media. Time spent with it surpasses time spent with any other media. However, some viewers are now watching TV on the internet, which is becoming particularly evident in the English market. Over time, the CBC expects, and I think we all do, that the internet and online TV will continue to grow. According to Lacroix, as well as being Canada's largest cultural institution, CBC Radio Canada is one of the most influential brands in Canada across all industries. And believe it or not, it is the highest ranked media. A recent tracking shows 57% of Canadians consider one or more CBC Radio Canada services to be personally important to them, and 73% of Canadians strongly agree there is a clear need and a role for CBC Radio Canada in the future. The media landscape is changing, and we all know that what the future holds for any public or even private broadcaster is uncertainty. But I will say this, Madam Speaker, we know Canada is a big country. It needs to be serviced with unique Canadian programming. Canadians have enriching stories, and that needs to be told. So the future generations have a better understanding of how great this country has evolved. All of these important points should be taken into consideration when we're looking at this Bill C-308. Thank you.
Questions and, resuming debate, reprise de débat. The honourable member